Hey, what's going on, guys? Kitsune here, back with another video. Today I thought I would go ahead and do a Swordsoul list that I actually took to a regional this past weekend. Managed to go X1, made it all the way to the finals, unfortunately lost there. And I guess some bad tiebreakers meant I ended up finishing 6th. So, I mean, still very good overall. Definitely took home a mat. Would have been really nice to win one, but definitely wasn't expecting, to do all that well with Swordsoul. But, I mean, the deck is still very good. It's obviously, not the best, like, 2 or 3 decks, but, overall, the deck is still very competitive. You're still able to make a lot of plays with it. And it has some really decent matchups, I think, right now. So I thought I'd just quickly kind of go by card. So we've got the 3 Moyi. We've got the 3 Longyun, the 2 Taya, and the 2 Ecclesia. So obviously you're wanting to max out on Moyi and Longyun. These are obviously your 2 best cards in the deck. Longyun is going to obviously get you into any of your 10s that you may need, plus the burn damage is obviously very relevant for time. Moyi, just being able to draw a card after you Synchro Summon is going to be huge. A lot of times you're drawing into maybe a hand trap. Several times I drew into Pot of Desires, which was just, great in and of itself. And, maybe drawing into some follow-up. 2 Taya, you definitely, because you are playing Desires, 1 is kind of risky. You can usually kind of get away with it, but, a lot of times I think 2 is the right amount just to avoid accidentally, banishing it. Plus, sometimes it does become your normal, and then at a point you do want to have 1 more for follow-up. And then just 2 Ecclesia. Same reason, you never want to play 1. It's definitely a better card. It's definitely a good enough card that it should justify more than 1. But 3, when you are trying to go first, isn't the best, just because at that point, if you're drawing into, if you've drawn in your opening hand, it's just kind of a dead card until your next turn. So, because you definitely don't want to be using it as your normal, just because Ash is really popular right now in this format. So you definitely don't want to be doing that. So I think 2 is the right amount. 3 Emergence. This is obviously just a consistency card. This is going to get you into any Swordsoul you need, or if you already obviously have access to a Synchro, any, worm monster that you may need. So, obviously, just definitely maxing out there. The 1 Sacred Summit. This does have a few applications. This can be a great turn 3 follow-up. If you're, turn 2, if you're just trying to, get some back on the board to make a play, you can definitely use it as that. But, there are a lot of times where maybe you draw it, or, you use the Chi search to grab this if you're feeling like you maybe need an extra, negate. Because it definitely can bring back, like the Moyi if you use Taya that turn. So it really kind of depends on the hand as far as, like, what you want to extend out into. But it's still definitely just worth playing one of it. The 1 Blackout. This is obviously a really great card. It doesn't do the most in some matchups, so it really just kind of depends, which is, why you don't necessarily want to max out on anything like that, or play more than just 1, because sometimes you are going to banish it off Desires, but it's not that big of a deal, just because, at that point you can just Chi search, like a follow-up, like for like a Taya. But overall, I think, you still want to obviously play this card because it does still win you, games. And it has a very obviously relevant effect in the graveyard, being able to be banished for a token. There's a lot of times where I feared Taya being hit by an Imperm, in a follow-up, and just banishing the Blackout kind of ensures, even if they do, hit me with Imperm, I'm still going to get that token with Blackout. For the Tenyis, you are maxing out on Ashuna and Vishudu. I think these are the only ones that you need to max out on. Ashuna is obviously very good for getting you into any of your other Tenyis that you may need, and Vishudu is going to be a really good spot removal. You can just bring it out, basically trade 1 for 1 with, whatever card you may fear your opponent has, whether or not it's a set card, or, in a lot of cases, maybe like a Rise Heart. Juadhara, this baby you could bump up to 3. And this is a 40 card list, so if you maybe were okay with 41, it'd definitely be the card that I would maybe add overall. Just being able to grab any of your worms that are banished back to your hand. It's a really great recursion that allows you to just obviously, continue to make plays. The 1 Shrihana. You don't necessarily need more than 1. Obviously, that is going to be your main target off of the Heavenly Dragon Circle. Sometimes you do draw it, and, it can be irrelevant not necessarily normal summon, but, you know, a kind of like special summon just to bring out the monk. Let me go quickly over kind of like going second, like hand traps, and then we'll go over the extra deck. So we are playing 3 Nibiru. It does obviously conflict with your Tenyis, but you know it's too good against most decks to not play it, and a lot of times you are going to have access to a Sword Soul, so you know having the Tenyis being live isn't usually a big deal. 3 Ash. I mean, this is obviously going to hit Branded Fusion. This is going to hit, you know, just really anything you may fear your opponent is playing. I mean, I played 2 Branded, and, you know, unfortunately for them, fortunately for me, you know, every turn I saw an Ash Blossom, so, and that's really all you need against Branded, you know, in a lot of situations. You know, obviously there are some situations where they can play through that, but, you know, usually just Ashing Branded Fusion just kind of ends their turn. 3 talent. This obviously is very relevant against Kashtira. Arise Heart is mandatory, so as long as you can just activate 1 card on your opponent's turn, you're going to trigger Arise Heart, and you can take it for, you know, to do some damage. You know, you don't really have anything to link it off into, so you definitely need to deal with it kind of then and there that turn, so... But typically, you know, especially in this deck, like, you're very easily able to OTK, so, you know, just being able to steal it and, you know, put up, you know, at least 5k more damage, it's really easy to do for this deck. 2 Pot of Desires. Obviously, the ability to draw 2 in any deck is going to be great. This deck makes it so much easier. You know, you pretty much have everything you need relevantly at 3, so you're not worried about banishing any, you know, good one-ofs. You know, if it gets ashed, that's great, honestly, because, you know, everything else that you have is, you know, better. So if you can just basically, you know, get rid of their 1 hand trap, maybe you have a Talents in hand, you can look at their hand, see if they have an Nibiru, get rid of that. It really just kind of depends, but, you know, Pot of Desires is obviously an auto-include. It is definitely going to help you, even if it gets ashed, even if you get to draw 2, so, you know, if it's at 3, you definitely want to play 3. If it's at 2, you're going to play 2, so... Love the card overall, and then obviously its interaction with Qingying, just being able to boost it to essentially almost being able to OTK by itself. That is obviously going to be, you know, pretty important. And then finally 3 Imperm, you know, just having another hand trap that's not a monster, that doesn't trigger talent, since that is obviously a very popular hand trap in the format, is going to be pretty good, you know. Doesn't kill most decks, but, you know, if you're able to make your opponent play suboptimally, and, you know, they end on a board that isn't necessarily the best, you definitely are able to, you know, do a lot against them. This deck is going to be able to play through quite a bit, so, you know, as long as you can prevent your opponent from, you know, setting up, you know, uninterrupted, you have a pretty decent chance of playing through whatever they have. For the extra deck, 1 Yazi. Honestly, actually, Yazi didn't even come up for me at all over the weekend, but I mean, it's still important to play one of, you know, its effects still can come up. It really just kind of depends on the situation. Didn't for me, but I would never even consider cutting it. 2 Baxia. I mean, this one just came up all day, you know, whether or not it was to just summon back, you know, Moe or Taya to go into something else. Its shuffle effect was great, you know, that was easily a way to push for game and definitely helped me OTK several times. 2 Yugioh. Never need to play 3, but you definitely don't want to play 1. You weren't even playing 1 before Kashtira, you know, there's a lot of times you make it turn 1 and then you're making 1 turn 3, so definitely need to play 2 of that. Draco Berserker. Really good interactions with a lot of cards. Especially, you know, like Druid Swarm. There was you know, 2 times I played, you know, Dragon Link, and just being able to have them go Druid Swarm effect and banish it so it doesn't even hit the field. So, you know, its effect doesn't even trigger. So, you know, I think Draco Berserker, definitely a very good card. It plays into a lot of really good, you know, a lot of really good cards that really need to hit the board. Plus, you know, being able to double attack and gain attack is pretty good. Dragite. You can maybe cut this for something else. I like it because, you know, not only does it act as a spell trap negate, because, you know, you typically have Moe and Grave, but because you are maining Nibiru, you actually have access to its other effect to kind of bounce. So, kind of two relevant effects that can definitely help you push for some damage as well. So I like it in the deck. That could be something that you switch out for maybe another, Synchro 10 or maybe another Synchro 8 or another Ling monster if you'd like. Chao Feng. This is obviously one of your best ways to protect yourself from Nibiru. It does require a little bit more of... It definitely requires a certain group of cards, that you've drawn in order to make it, but, it is relevant if you do know your opponent is playing Nibiru. The Wen Qingying, all the cash tier players, they definitely don't like seeing this. That was obviously the one thing they're always going to go after in your extra deck. And it is unfortunate when they do hit it, but, obviously this deck is able to kind of do some other things as well, so it's not the end of the world, but it is definitely the one thing that, they do definitely prioritize going after. Quixing Longyun, I made it once the entire weekend. Still a great card, It still hits, several decks, very badly, and then it's not relevant to many others. So it really just kind of depends on the matchup, but the additional burn damage is really good, and, just being able to banish cards is not bad. The Ice Jade Gamir. This obviously came up against Kashtira, branded, just being able to protect yourself from, dying to, Druid Swarm, to Mirror Jade, to having your cards, in just any way of destruction. So it is definitely relevant. It can come up. So definitely playing the one of is nice. The one Baron. This was typically my end board. It was, typically Baron plus, Chi Xiao, and then maybe some set card or some hand traps in hand. That's usually enough. I think this format it's not like it's super low power format, but it is definitely not like the most high power format. So, ending on typically 2 negates is going to be generally enough. But, obviously sometimes, they're able to play through it, but most of the times they're not able to kill you through it. And this deck does have very good follow-up. So, even the instance where they do break the board, you do have a usually pretty good chance of having some form of follow-up. 2 Monk. You could maybe play the third. I don't really know what I would want to cut. I don't think I want to cut Abaxia. Definitely not cutting the one Yazi. The third didn't really ever come up to me. I really wasn't ever worried about not having it. And then, even in the instance, you can banish one, add it back to the extra deck with that Hara. So it's not the most irrelevant, card to maybe have at 3, but I just didn't think that it was, super necessary. And then you have the one Shaman. This is obviously just a great way for you to bring back a Yugioh for your opponent's turn, because it obviously only negates it till the end of the turn, or negates any extra deck monster till the end of your turn, and then after that you can definitely use it again. So it's definitely worth playing, just because it does kind of help you with some form of follow-up. And yeah, that's the extra deck overall. I really liked it. Like I said, don't think there would be anything I would change necessarily. And let me just go ahead and go over the side deck real quick. So the side deck, I did have just one effect Veiler. I had it as a cross-out target. I didn't encounter anybody playing Veiler. It sometimes was nice working as a 4th Imperm, but I would probably switch this out for something else. The cross-out was relevant. It protected me once from Evenly. It protected me once from D-Barrier. One time it protected me against Nibiru. I liked it overall. It does obviously require, your opponent to have certain cards in their deck, you to be playing certain cards, but I think overall it was a nice inclusion, and I was glad I had it in the side deck. 2 Thrust. This was obviously, becomes pretty relevant in several matchups. Most of the spells and traps that you play are just normal spells and traps, so you're able to kind of search out whatever you need in the deck. So, running 2 of this in the side, I think it's pretty good. 2 Lightning Storm and Duster. I would maybe just, switch those over to Cosmics. I don't think they were very helpful playing Lightning Storm. I wasn't, typically trying to hit any back row, and, most of the time they had, some form of, monster protection, so I would maybe just, switch that out to something a little bit more relevant. 3 evenly. Obviously, this card, does everything you need to do. Like I said, sometimes I brought it in as a cross-out target. Sometimes I brought it in going second when I needed it. Really just kind of depends on the situation, but, it's definitely one of the best cards in the game currently. And then 3D Barrier. I did play a few branded. I played, no Swordsoul Mirror or anything like that. One Kashtira, or it was one or two Kashtira. This card, it can basically be on auto win against a lot of decks, just them not being able to, exceed summon, synchro summon, fusion summon is going to be really big when you have the ability to set up, a pretty good board. So definitely worth playing. And then again, I definitely needed to play at least one copy because it was brought in against me, and so being able to have that as a cross-out target is really nice. So overall, that's the deck. Enjoyed it, like I said. Ended up going X1, just kind of lost in the final, which was unfortunate, but was really happy with the deck overall. I definitely wasn't expecting to do that well. And yeah, just it was a pretty good fun weekend. Let me know what y'all think about the deck down below, and I will see y'all next time. Thank you.